Hey everyone, and welcome to Beyond the Raise podcast, where we get under the hood of founder scaling stories. Will and I are here with Nick Van Dyke, CEO of Oort Energy. Welcome to the podcast, Nick.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having me on.
No problem at all. So we generally sort of get stuck in straight away with the obvious. So just tell us a little bit about Oort Energy and what's the sort of problem that you guys are solving.
So Oort Energy have developed a highly efficient and lower cost hydrogen electrolyzer. Okay. And really the aim of what we were trying to do was bridge the gap between renewable energy and making green chemicals, things like ammonia, fertilizer, green hydrocarbons. So we were all focused on that right from day one. We really had our kind of core emphasis, I guess, in the company to make technology that is commercially viable. Okay, so the market drives the change needed to solve the climate crisis. So we were focused on climate tech, but not thinking about focusing that climate tech, solving that climate problem. We were thinking, which is huge, by the way, but because it's so huge, it requires the market to uptake. So we really focused on trying to make something that was commercially viable, but made the world a better place.
Okay, amazing. Sounds good. Interesting. Looking forward to getting into that a little bit more. I guess something that's quite interesting about your guys' journey is that you, founding in 2021, you were commercially selling, as you just said, very, very quickly. So what was that sort of, what did that early momentum sort of feel like? 'Cause that must have been, amazing, really.
Well, yes, it was amazing. So we raised seed capital in late 2022 and actually we delivered our first product onto a customer site in late 2023, fully operational in January 2024. So from raising seed capital to getting to a product in the field at hundreds of kilowatts, truly very, very fast. What did it feel like? It was an amazing journey. And I'll tell you, so proud to deliver that first product. I mean, that was a super high. And we were really, really proud of what we'd done. But it was a lot of pressure. So, we had to deliver, we had to push. The whole team was pushing to get this to market, to solve the problems that we needed. It did create a kind of lot of camaraderie, a lot of solidarity in the team, so we were working together. We were in the thick of it, getting products to market. We all had the same kind of vision. So it was amazing. But there was a lot of pressure and it was tough. And, things happen, unexpected things happen, problems happen that you've got to solve. Simple things like, parts not arriving or parts getting lost in the mail or, it sounds trivial, but when you're on a tight deadline, and I promised my investors we could do this, right? So it was tough.
Super frustrating as well. Yeah, absolutely. But super frustrating for that part of that process to be the thing that lets you down. It's one of those things where you have to look and go, I literally couldn't do anything more. Like I did everything I possibly could, but that happened and I couldn't control that. And then was there, obviously knowing that sort of time, was there also sort of market environment changes as well? And did that sort of lead to an even tougher impact on you?
So we went from there on the back of delivering that first product. We made nearly about £2.5 million worth of sales. So really quite an exciting time, really quite growth time. But in 2024, the market just really changed. The whole climate tech market changed. The market for kind of green hydrogen changed. A lot of companies were losing a lot of money. We'd seen that. One of the reasons we set up and did what we did was because we saw that, but the market started taking notice, right? When are these large companies going to make a profit? A lot of projects didn't get to FID or financial investment decision for one reason or another. Often they were too expensive, or they didn't have a long-term off-taker. For one reason or another, the change, and there was an impending change in the US administration, and everybody knew that if that happened, climate tech was going to suffer, and indeed it did.
Yeah. No, I mean,
Investors got weary; they didn't want to invest. Plus, of course, the world was volatile,
yeah.
so money started going into different things. When the world is volatile, people put their money in much safer markets, rather than high risk. We're no longer trying to solve climate change; we're just trying to keep
Yeah.
ourselves safe.
Yeah, I mean, Will and I were sort of heavily focused in that renewable space when the Trump administration came in, and I wouldn't say it nosedived, but I would say that all clients just became very risk averse, and we're just going to sort of hold still for where we are right now and just sort of see how this plays out for a bit longer. But they'd already been seeing how it was going to play out because Trump was imminently, likely, possibly going to come in. So it really felt like an extended period of everyone just sort of sitting tight, hunkering down, and not wanting to take risks, which makes perfect sense, but it's not great for the economy though.
No.
So you mentioned then that you generated 2.5 million revenue early and then hit a much tougher environment. How much we just touched on sort of, I guess, the macro political environment and investor sentiment. How much did those things impact fundraising conversations?
There was a big impact on fundraising conversations. So lots of investors had lost a lot of money in climate tech. There was companies that a lot of large companies, public companies, their valuation fell through the floor. Okay, from the heady heights. They were probably overvalued in 2021. Let's be clear, but they fell from those heady heights. A little bit like the dot-com boom. So a lot of investors, particularly investors in those public companies, lost a lot of money, lost a lot of confidence in climate tech. People were putting money in safer bets. And, like I say, people sort of, as I mentioned before, people started noticing that a lot of these large climate tech companies were making these kind of eye-watering losses. Hard to envisage how they were going to turn that around. Yeah. So it became a much, much harder talk to investors. Weirdly as well, investors were saying, investors want to make money. That's why they invest, right? I know they want to invest in climate tech because it's the honourable thing to do, but fundamentally they want to make money.
Yeah.
And there were easier and simpler ways of making money, actually. Sort of people in software or in silicon or something like that, silicon chips. Those stocks were rising very, very fast, but like AI now. Nuclear fusion was rising very, very fast. It's a long way off. It's a moonshot. Those stocks were raising, your valuation of your company was raising. Climate tech was very standard. So very, very hard to get an investor to part with their money to say, look, this is a good bet for the future. So, yeah.
Yeah. What happens internally when that happens, when that momentum slows, and what was this knock-on effect for you guys internally?
So internally, we, there's two things. So, when times are tough, resilient people really keep going, but some people drop off. They struggle, and it's not anything to do with the person. When times are good, things are easy, but it puts a lot of mental strain on people. So, and so people, mental health, think there's got to be an easier way. So internally, our team shrank.
Yeah.
We didn't replace people that necessarily left because the funding thing was tough.
Yeah.
We kept core team. But actually the core team that was there, to some extent, actually, weirdly enough, became kind of stronger. We created a really strong, resilient team that went together. We always had a good, strong culture, but actually the team were kind of, when times get tough, the tough get going, as they say. And actually, the team were more resilient to get these things to market. They wanted to know, what could we do to help make things better? How can we get more products to market? People stepped up. People started saying, what can I do to help sales? Yeah. It's not where I've naturally sit. I'm naturally an engineer, but what can I do to help? And that was that was amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing when you're a founder to see that. I mean, it's wonderful. But don't get me wrong. It was tough, and things were tough internally. There is a resilience. You have to announce to people that we can't have pay rises this year because we're got to keep this business viable. It's a tough thing to say to people.
Absolutely. It's so true. I mean, I had a very similar experience in my previous company, that when, we had a sort of tougher period and consolidated in terms of the size of the business, but then went on to have, with a more core team, went on to have some of our best years. And exactly that is sort of, you then got the right people on the bus. You've got, people pulling in the right direction, which it can be a positive outcome, actually. Maybe an unintentional one, but it can have real benefit. But as you said, not without difficult conversations along the way, and definitely many moments that keep the founder up. But then maybe you're left with other employees that also share that founder's mentality, whereas that's not inherently one. And you can't expect it to be, right?
No, you can't expect it to be. The cold hard truth is, people, they work. They want to see the people they work successful. They want to see the company successful, but ultimately they're trying to be successful themselves. That's what people want to be, right? So they want to do a good job because they want to, take home a good salary and look after themselves and better themselves. That's the truth of the world. I think that's what we are. That's what people are trying to do.
I think that's amazing as well, though, that it made that sort of core founding team even stronger. It just shows you, well, one, obviously did a great job in terms of hiring those people, but two, I now know what I need to find more of, because they hunkered down and drove it forward. And you have some periphery people that didn't do that, and that, as we'll go on to more later as well, that happens. But it's a really good tick to go, cool, I'd see more of these types of people. They're the ones. It's great.
Yeah, but I would say you do need a variety of people. Okay, so you're 100% right. We have the people that hunker down and deliver the projects, but but the truth is, when times are good, those people. I mean, although when times were tough, they thought this is probably not for me. When times were good, they were delivering good work. So it's not actually. So I don't want to say that because, but mental health is incredibly important, and stress is incredibly important, and people take on that stress. And if that's too tough, you've got to, I don't want life to be unpleasant. Life is not meant to be unpleasant. It's my one saying. So actually, if life is unpleasant, you've got to do something different. And I get that. So I don't want to take it away from anybody, because actually, like I say, when times are good, but those people did good work, actually. I credit them for that.
Yeah.
It just, when times are tough, it wasn't for them.
Well, I completely agree. I mean, you only get one ride, so you've got to enjoy it. I see that a lot.
Yeah.
Actually, I think with people, you need to have fun along the way. You have your serious moments, but you've got to enjoy what you do, what gets you out of bed every day. So, how do you then, as a founder, avoid panic during those difficult periods? How do you bring the team together? How do you steady the ship?
Well, you've hit on the core answer, really, which is you've got to bring the team with you. Okay, so talk, communicate. Tell them what you're doing. You don't want to scare people, but conversely, you've got to, people know where we are. People know what the situation is. So talk them through what the issues are. Talk them what we're trying to do, what we're trying to achieve. It was stressful. I recently have introduced actually a kind of well-being Wednesdays, where we at lunchtime on a Wednesday, we all go and do a bit of kind of stretching and breathing exercises, which is very kind of,
Gen Z.
Very kind of startup-ish, I guess, but it's not what we, it was just something about getting the team together, a kind of a low-cost way of trying to keep the team. But you've got to keep that team together, keep that team thing. Communication is incredibly important. So, weirdly, although the team are now busier because we've got less people delivering products, but actually I try to arrange more communication type exercises where we have kind of project updates in the same way that we almost didn't in the past. We had kind of a monthly town hall where we all got together and talked. Now we have kind of weekly project updates. I mean, the project teams always had those.
Sure.
But, sort of company-wide things, just get together for 40 minutes or something and, just where are we, what's happening, what's doing it. Because we always say, we're in it as a team, and if one person fails, the project fails, right?
Mm,
So bringing the team together, and we introduced kind of incentives and positives for delivering on time in full, so in budget. So it was, and actually the team have really got into that. When I suggested, do you think we should slow these meetings down? They all went, no, we love knowing what's going on, right? So keeping and bringing the team with you, talk, communicate. It's so important,
Yeah.
Talk about the vision, talk about where you're going, talk about what's happening with investors,
Yeah.
what's good, what's bad.
Completely agree. I've been doing a terrible job of explaining this, but the previous mentor that I had, he used a sort of cathedral analogy. It's very similar in that sense of, everybody is just laying their individual brick, and in and of themselves, they just feel, okay, my job's not that important. But then you take a step back and look at the bigger picture, and bringing people on that journey and showing visibility of that, and then you can step on and say, okay, yeah, that's actually what we're all coming together for here. So we're moving in that same direction.
Yeah, celebrate the little things as well.
Yeah.
Actually, the little achievements you should celebrate. Tell people, great job.
Yeah. I had a conversation with a founder. To be fair, the business is sort of, fairly well established now, but it was quite interesting because I've not heard anyone do this for a while, but everyone's bonus is purely about the company objective or objectives. So everyone is just fed into that. So if a company is the objective, everyone gets a bonus. Great. Even salespeople that are involved in selling the product, they're not on a commission. That sort of selling of that product is tied into the overarching goal of what they're trying to achieve. And I've sort of said to him, do the salespeople find that motivating? And his point was, yeah, because it brings everyone together. Everyone's trying to help one another. There's no sort of like looking after number one. It's everyone's got everyone else's back. Everyone pitches in. Even if people don't do sales, they're thinking about how can they help sales, or they might know a contact or whatever it is. So really lovely to hear that can work, because generally speaking, bigger companies, it doesn't necessarily work. So that was quite lovely to sort of hear that it can.
Yeah. So I think it does work. It works for us. It keeps people motivated. We do something similar. In the large companies, large profit-making companies, and I've come from a corporate background, large profit-making companies often offer an annual bonus, right? But what's weird about it is the mentality starts to become, it's bonus time, it's part of your salary. Whereas actually, and even though it's nominally supposed to be for your own delivery, and it is, you've got to deliver in order to be part of that bonus, people start to expect that you're going to get the bonus. In large companies, no manager wants to tell their team that they're not going to get a bonus this year. So everybody tries to build their team up. So essentially, bonuses become almost an expectation, become part of your salary. It becomes a standard part. Whereas actually in a startup, we can't do that. Often we're not profit making, so you're not sharing the profits out. Number one, but number two is we, is things. But if you say, look, if we sell a product, if we deliver it on time in full, and if we make a profit, we'll take a percentage of that profit and we'll share it with the team. People are like, yeah, I'd like to see that. I'd love a bit of that. And actually, there is a real physical seeing. And I 100% agree with you, particularly in small companies. Actually, it's important that it's not like a sales bonus or a financial bonus or whatever it is. It's a team bonus where everybody gets a part of the feels like they're part of making that thing successful.
Definitely. Sounds good. And when we were talking sort of earlier in the week, you talked about, the company making a bit of a pivot, which, is always a brave decision. So what was it that sort of made you realize that maybe the original business model needed to evolve?
Well, so we made initial sales. Those initial sales actually in 2025 started to dry up. Business is very lumpy. We sold large, quite expensive pieces of equipment. Okay. So £2.5 million worth of sales sounds great, but it was actually only 3 products, right? So the difference between 2 products and 4 products is quite a big number.
Yeah.
So it's lumpy. It's it's a difficult business, and quite frankly, my the investment environment had changed. And some of my investors said to me, I mean, I think unrealistically, because I never promised this, but 2 years from launch, why are you not selling £100 million a year of products? We thought you'd be selling £100 million of products a year. The stress on them as well, right? They're now finding the stressful environment themselves, and they're trying to. So they're finding that stress. So for us, we pivoted from the technology is the same, and actually, am I right or wrong? We tried to cover both camps a little bit, so we still sold products, but we've pivoted into developing projects. Okay, so projects to deliver chemicals. It's a very different move. Very exciting. It's very different, but it's smoother sales and actually, like I say, for us, we've been able to bootstrap the company, keep the company afloat with sales, but it's not enough to really grow.
Yeah.
Okay. We're struggling to go from a kind of here mentality to something that is up there. Yeah, particularly, we are there are some large companies that that essentially government sponsored. And it's very hard to compete against those. So we go in, even though we've got some really exciting and really, really great technology that makes things cheaper and bigger. When you're selling big products, by the way, the other thing that nobody tells you is, this term I never even heard of until I started Oort Energy, which is bankability. Proving that your products, if somebody's going to spend £10 million or £100 million for you, they want to know that you're going to be there to support it, and B, that it's going to work. Right. So getting over that kind of credibility gap is also quite difficult. So by moving to projects, it's a very, very different business model, but now we're selling the end product that we make, which is the chemical, right? We start to sell the chemical. Now, is that the right thing to do? It's still early stages, right? We are developing projects now, but we've got a lot of interest. Things are going well. We have that thing. The investors are now very excited. Yeah. I hate to convince them, but they are now very excited because they invested in one thing, right? But they are now very excited, and the market's really excited, which is great because I can start to talk about the benefits of why our technology is much better.
Okay.
And that's what really made me change. It was really the market, the fact that there's lumpy sales. When you first start a company, you think, oh, yeah, I'm going to create a product, create some early sales. The product is wanted. I'm just going to keep selling more and wait for the money to roll in.
Yeah. Yeah. Unfortunately so. Yeah, if it was easy, everyone would be doing it, right? But
Yeah.
on the bankability there, and that's really interesting because when you're a startup, you don't have that background. So, well, just no problem. Just speak to these handful of clients, especially because what you were saying, your products are big and lumpy. So you're not firing loads of these things out. It's 2 or 3. How do you get over that when they start doing their due diligence and they need to know they can rely on you? How did you get around that? Because it does sound quite challenging. If they're spending a lot of money, they need to know that you're sort of credible and going to be there for sure.
Yeah, actually delivering working projects is great. And actually, because it does 2 things. One, it gives you data and it shows that your products are working in the field. They're in a customer environment. But actually, there's nothing quite like being able to bring a potential customer or potential investor to show the technology in the field. Because actually, you can talk, you can show pictures, you can show business models, you can do whatever. But when somebody walks in and goes, I can remember one comment who said to me, I expected to see a kind of a university mock-up, not a professional product. I expected this to be something we would need to turn into a product. But, the engineering, I'm going to sidetrack a little bit here for a minute, but one of the things I got people to do, and this is tough for engineers because they almost don't understand it. They focus on making sure it works, making sure it's reliable, making sure it's economic. And I say, make sure the pipes are all parallel and horizontal. Make sure that the container looks good, right? But Nick, it just has to work. Why would we spend money on putting a picture on the side? Well, but so it's this old analogy in restaurants. People eat with their eyes first. So they walk in and people go, it's really high quality engineering. Actually,
Yeah.
all they've really seen is the pipes are parallel.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So, but actually it's quite powerful to see that working in the field. So my big advice to almost anybody is get out there, get one delivering, working at scale. It's the most important thing you can do because it just shows people that you can do it. On the back of that, you can start to make sales. On the back of those, you deliver more, you get, customer feedback. I mean, I was lucky. We have a large, very, very well respected corporate as an investor.
Right.
And they're an investor, right? But they bring a lot of credibility.
Yeah.
So they start to say, oh, well, you're backed by these guys. And you know what I mean? So there's a number of kind of, I don't want to say tricks, but there's a number of things you can do that can really help with that credibility and bankability piece.
Yeah. Okay.
But you have to, there's tough because you can't go, I can't say, well, it works at 1 megawatt, let's make 100 megawatts because you've got to build it up and scale. And as you rightly said before, it takes time to deliver in deep tech. You can't just go, I'll do the next one, and next week it's a bigger one. Each one takes months to deliver.
Yeah. Okay. And one thing I wanted to ask you as well, because I find this quite fascinating, is how difficult is it to pivot whilst also still fundraising? Because the story changes, right? So that's quite a challenge.
It is very difficult. Yeah. So you have a company. So first of all, when's the right time to pivot? Right? Question number one. And you're in a company, you're fundraising, the market is drying up, the fundraising environment is difficult, and you decide to pivot. But you're fundraising because money's running out, right? That's the reason you're fundraising. So, and when you pivot, particularly a pivot like we did, you need a different type of mentality, a different type of people. But you don't really have the money to employ them, right? I mean, we're lucky because we do two things. So even though we pivoted from doing products to projects, we didn't stop doing products, and our products are going into our projects. So the team is needed for both, right? But we need to add those additional people. That puts a lot of pressure on the founder. Because they have to start doing a lot of the things, I'd love people who are, I don't know. I mean, I know a little bit more now, but at the time I didn't know anything about how do I negotiate land and develop a multi-million-pound project and finance that, and I couldn't surround myself with people that had done that before because we didn't have the money. So big borrow and steal, as they say. Go and seek out advice. I talk to people. I talk to investors that had done projects who gave me advice. I started thinking about offtake agreements and thinking about land. And probably the biggest game changer was developing a robust business model that said this project is going to make money, right? Because actually, that's why people invest in. They don't, with products or with companies, people invest in a company because they hope it's going to make money in the future, or there's an exit, or whatever it is. But with projects, there's none of that. Nobody's going to invest in a project that loses money. You don't invest in a wind farm that loses money. You invest in a wind farm that makes money. You can't predict the wind. You could have 6 years of no wind, and so it's not like it's without risk. But actually, people invest in projects that are going to make money. So you need to develop that long term, which is a kind of a learning that I had to do. Because I didn't have the team that could do some of those things for me.
Yeah. What about the emotional side of that, though? Like, pivoting when you've put so much effort, you've built the team, investors, money, you've raised money, you're building a product that's selling. How was that emotionally for you to sort of, you know, you're not leaving that behind, I know, but you know, to make that pivot and sort of focus elsewhere? That seems to me like that would have been very challenging.
Yeah, it's very difficult. It's very difficult. And I'm going to say that founders typically are pretty arrogant. We think we know what we're talking about. and and then we have to admit that maybe we didn't. that is actually quite a hard thing to do. It's a surprisingly hard thing to do because I spent my time convincing everybody else that I'm right, that this is the thing to go. And then I have to say, well, maybe I wasn't. Maybe we have to pivot. So, you know, on a kind of an emotional thing, it takes a little bit of time to get to make sure that to get that right, because unfortunately you do think you're right, and you did think you're right, and it's quite a hard thing to think. You know, it's easy to blame macroeconomic effects but you know, maybe my business model was wrong. Maybe, you know, and so it's a little bit searching actually, and a little bit hard. And you know, sometimes businesses can only pivot by changing the leadership team. You know, for that very reason, right? You know, but so emotionally on myself, it was quite hard, and then I had to convince the team. You know, I've got a team who are wedded to doing a certain thing. We've convinced each other. We've got a vision, and now I've got to say, actually, the vision's changing.
Yeah.
Convince investors as well. You know, even your current ones, because they've invested in you to do something. So, but emotionally, it's quite tough. And actually, you know, there was a time where my current investors went, maybe you're not the right person.
Right.
You know, that's the question. That's the question they're asking. Maybe a question they really asked is, are you the right person? Because you're now suggesting what you originally told us is not correct. Now, I'm lucky they had the foresight. They believed in me, and we carried on. And they are hugely supportive.
Yeah. You need
those tough times.
Yeah, totally. Fair play. I think that must have been very challenging. But you need founders to have that sort of blind belief, but you don't know what you don't know. You can use analysis and plan as much, but until you're in the thick of it and actually trying to do it, you just don't know. But fair play. I imagine that was a bit of a tough pill to swallow.
So, I mean, it seems to me, you've sort of built lean, deliberately so, in a market almost obsessed with growth. I know we said that there were moments maybe where staying lean was not by design. It was sort of forced on you. But it does still feel that you kind of deliberately stayed relatively lean whilst others have scaled, but maybe more aggressively. Would that be a fair assessment? And if so, why have you done that?
No, absolutely. So me personally, okay, I worked in a few different startups. You know, I've helped get products to market. A lot of what I do is help get products to market, think about commercialization. The problem with and growth is really, really important. So don't get me wrong. I mean, we're all focused on growth, but the philosophy we had right from the outset was we were going to grow with the market, not just suddenly build. You know, I saw too often in startups, you know, the classic thing is, let's build robotics. Okay, let's build a robot. And we end up, you replace two operators or two production operators or you know, people that build stuff, with two PhD trained robot engineers, and you're not actually delivering any more projects, right? But what happens is, you know, people start growing. Let's build the team. Let's grow, and I see, you know, the kind of these real highs and then these big falls, right? Because suddenly they run out of money and they've got too many people, too many overheads. And I couldn't see a clear pathway to profitability, right? So, you know, we were in a time, you know, 10 years ago where it was, you know, Series F, Series G funding. It just kept going back to the market and asking for more money. I'm like, it just mentally seems crazy. But obviously, although I was young, I lived through the .com era, right? Where a bunch of people went to investors and said, we're going to raise this money. It suddenly investors all went, well, hang on, these companies don't do anything. They're just paper companies. They all fell through the floor. And I saw deep tech. I was worried that deep tech was going to go through that thing. We're in a position where people were going, this is great. And we're building the company up and we're growing and the valuation's going up and up and up. But nobody was looking at the bottom line going, yeah, but losses are going up and up and up. So I said, long-term sustainable businesses ultimately make a profit.
Yeah.
Right.
Very, very true.
Ultimately view of that. And so I kind of created the business to do that in the first place. And we stayed lean. We had that mindset because I actually predicted back in the 2020s that tough times were coming. They did come, not in the way that I expected. But I actually thought it was going to be investors were going to start saying, well, hang on, these companies are all losing money. How do we, and they'll eventually just stop funding them. Actually, the companies that will survive are the companies that make a profit.
Yeah.
And so that's what I had to do from the outset. So that was the mentality of staying lean.
Good foresight. I mean, I saw time and time again companies that just overhired sort of post-COVID boom and then had to scale back massively. Do you think that's because you are maybe a more commercially focused CEO with your background rather than sometimes what you find a sort of technical founder? Sometimes the founder is the CTO and they might not have that commercial understanding, foresight, whatever it is, and just think product, we need to let's build this big team to deliver this fantastic product. You sort of touched on it a little bit earlier as well with your analogy around the way you see product versus maybe a technical engineering mind.
I mean, it's my mindset. I guess I don't know, where did that mindset come from? Did it come from the fact that I have been in different businesses? I mean, I've been in R&D my whole life, but even from a young age, when I say a young age, a young scientist, not from a child, but even from when I was a young scientist, I wanted to make a difference in the world by getting products to market. I once thought, whereas even when I was in academia, I saw people focusing on writing papers that nobody reads. And I was like, what are we doing? I mean, how is this going to impact the world? And there are some incredibly valuable papers that are written, by the way. So don't get me wrong, this is not ubiquitous by any means. But I saw a lot of that and and so I had a kind of focus. And I had a pivotal moment in my very young scientific career. So I was doing some young research and didn't quite work in the way that I wanted it to. And not my supervisor, actually, there was an academic in the department who said to me, I've got to publish that now. It's a result. I was a little bit embarrassed, I was a little bit weak. And in those days, people would write to you and ask you, I mean, not very many because I'm not that old, but there was still some old school people who would write to you and ask for a reprint of the paper. And somebody wrote to me and asked me for a reprint. And I was embarrassed to send it to them because I didn't think it was worthy of a publication. And I thought, I'm not going to do that. I want to do something that has impact and makes a difference. Yeah. So to some extent, I had that mindset even from a young technology scientific thing. But yeah, I think commercially in my career, I've seen things that worked and I've seen things that haven't worked. And I've seen where companies are profitable and companies that are not. And so I had that commercial focus and that commercial mindset, but I also had that technical knowledge. So maybe, but like I say, it's hard to pinpoint the exact one point that said, I've got that and different, but you need a team of different people. Yeah. So I would say you need people that are experts in different things, but that commercial focus is really important. And actually, that really means thinking about the customer.
Yeah.
Just thinking about people think commercial focus means it's got to work, and that is right, but it's also thinking about what the customer wants. Absolutely. And in deep tech, we often forget that. we think we know what the customer wants.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, Nick. So just thinking about sort of opportunity a little bit more. So hydrogen and SAF are huge opportunities, but they move slowly, right? It takes a long time. So
Yeah.
how do you manage to build patience in the company and in the team?
So I think it comes a little bit down to that. It's about, making sure that you focus on that ultimate vision,
Mm,
right? So, as long as you keep that vision and you keep, sort of reminding the team about the vision, talking about where we want to go, thinking about that, that actually helps us, helps the team stay focused because we know it's not quick. We
yeah.
know it's not. And actually, but we also know it's needed, right? Things like sustainable aviation fuel, green fertilizers, green hydrogen is really just a conduit to green chemicals, actually. So green hydrogen is the bit that hooks to the renewable energy that provides the kind of feedstock for making the green chemicals, whether it's fertilizers, whether it's sustainable aviation. Sustainable aviation fuels had a boom recently, right? For a number of reasons. People are particularly interested in energy security right now. But equally, there's government mandates. People want to start doing things. But you can't do it economically unless you make low cost green hydrogen, which is we come in, right? So all of those chemicals, it's the conduit to making those green chemicals. We can't do it on our own. We partner with a number of people. We have a partnership model, and we always have done. But yeah, it's it is time. It's an exciting time, but these things are slow. But I think focusing on the vision, focusing on what we're trying to achieve is the way to keep everybody happy, both investors, the development cycle is very slow, feed studies, potential investors, the team, they're all keeping them going. But weirdly, the other thing I would say though is one of our core principles is we try to do things fast.
Right.
So the difficult one is getting to the point where we're ready to deliver. Once we start to deliver, we can do it quite fast. And that's our that's one of our core
Yeah.
capabilities. We built systems that have low EPC costs, easy to plug, EPC engineering, procurement, commissioning costs. So basically you just plonk the system down, plumb it and wire it together and turn it. So that was our core focus.
Okay. And then what about the investor side then? Because I imagine unless they are very au fait with exactly what you're doing, which some of them might be, I don't know the investors, but what did they misunderstand perhaps about those timelines?
Well, so investors, ones that have done this before want to, they sort of understand the timescale, I would say, but actually most investors want you to go faster, a bit like customers, actually. I mean, I'll take the analogy a step back from a customer for a minute. So what I found early on is, you're negotiating these things with customers. They take a long time. You say, look, it's going to take me 12 months to build this product. And if you give me a purchase order, let's just say it's November. If you give me a purchase order, I can deliver it by next November. And then they and they come and kick the tires and they go back and forth. And then eventually in July, they go, right, here's the purchase order. And they go, we're still going to get it in November. Hang on. And investors are a bit the same, right? So it takes a long time to get investors to look through the due diligence, to make sure that, the business plans are right. Are we doing this? Are the partnerships right? Are we doing this? But actually, most investors want you to do it quickly, as quick as possible. And trying to manage that is tough, actually, because you want to be positive, but realistic.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I mean, we're sort of lucky because we can move fast, but
Yeah. It's unusual in deep tech.
related as well, right?
Yeah. And that's a bit unusual in deep tech as well, right? So yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll mark that for you to go.
What would you say has been the hardest leadership challenge for you personally?
The hardest leadership challenge. When you start a business, first of all, the first thing you think is everybody's going to think like you. we're gonna get out there and make this company successful, right? But actually, the thing that nobody sort of tells you when a lot of people talk to me when you recruit a young engineer, what do you want to? In 2 years' time, I want to be a senior manager or the CEO, right? You know, they've all got this kind of ambition of climbing up the ladder very, very quickly, right? And getting it. But actually, you know, the kind of corporate pyramid. But what nobody actually tells you is the pyramid's upside down, right? And actually, when you're at the top, you've got the weight of that pyramid on top of you. You've got, you know, people have got. You're trying to create a company in a difficult environment. You're trying to make sure that you balance both books whilst keeping people happy, you know, managing people's expectations. People have got, it's a risky environment. People have got mortgages, children in school, you know, they've got, you know, everybody has their own kind of pressures. And so managing that as a team and keeping that has been a very, very it's been a tough lesson, actually, realizing that, you know, that actually things, they keep saying things float downhill. I won't say what that is, but things float downhill. And actually, as a leader, you're at the bottom of the pyramid. Things do float downhill and you're carrying it all. So actually, you know, I often think about that pyramid structure as being upside down. So, you know, that's been a tough leadership, keeping people resilient, keeping people looking after people's both mental well-being as well as their, you know, like I say, with their own everybody's got their own personal situations going on.
Yeah.
And
No, that's very true. I've always had the mindset of, you know, leading people, and you sort of think as you become the boss that, okay, that's great, I'm the boss now. But actually, I think you then absolutely have more bosses. And instead of thinking of it as, you know, they work for me, I've always been a mindset of I work for them. So you're absolutely right. Interesting pyramid analogy. I've not heard that one before.
Yeah. Actually, I mean, you can feel free to cut this one later, but I tell you a sort of an interesting story. When I was a young scientist, and you know, naturally, when you're quite good at science or technology or whatever it is, product development, you know, the boss comes to you and says to you, "We'd like you to take on the management role and manage the team." And you know, when you're a scientist, you have to make, you know, you get told this is what you're working on, this is the right thing to do. And I thought, thank you. I'm honoured that you think I can step up and manage the whole team. And, you know, my first management was R&D manager for a small company. And so I stepped up and, you know, told me that on the Friday. On the Monday morning, I turned up and sat in my seat and he goes, "You didn't actually tell me what the job is." And actually you have to kind of figure out that now you're the person in charge making the decisions, right? And, you know, and you just have to do what you think is, my philosophy in life is to just do what you think is right.
Yeah.
99% of the time you are right.
Yeah. I don't know if you follow Simon Sinek. I don't know exactly how to pronounce his name, but he talks about that and how, you know, probably as a generation, we've just done that consistently in organizations, just promoted people and said, right, now you're a manager because you were good at your job, but have not trained them or given them any understanding of what that actually means and how to then manage people. And so everyone is just figuring it out on the go. Which is wild.
Yeah. And for me, it was my first job outside of university. I've done a PhD and postdoc. I was at university for a while, but it's my first kind of job outside university. And weirdly, when I turned up, we didn't have an R&D manager. So I was made a position. So I didn't go, well, that's what that person did. I'll do the same as they do, but or not. So yeah, so it is sort of interesting in life. But you're right, we promote people because they do the job that they do well, not because they do the job that they're gonna do well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And everybody wants that promotion. Not sure they understand what they're asking for, but everybody wants that promotion.
Yeah.
I've always said we should pay people for doing a good job, not for being a manager.
That's true.
Right?
Absolutely.
And actually you can be a very successful technologist, not managing people, at least in our company, without becoming a manager. So, you know, if you want to make it to the top, you can make it to the top.
As a more sort of individual contributor rather than managing 100%.
You know,
I think you need both paths because some people are good at managing, some people aren't. Yeah, I totally agree.
And you do need a team of leaders, actually.
Yeah.
But they can be technology leaders, or people leaders or sales leaders or whatever it is, but people need to be able to be, and whatever they do, they need to be a kind of leader.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, too often, progression is only that promotion. So a lot of companies don't have that sort of vertical progression within your niche, within your area. So people want it because they're seeing that that's the only way I'm going to progress in my career.
Yeah.
And then Nick, moving towards the future, just to sort of end on this, I guess, is what are you sort of now most excited about that perhaps you weren't 12 months ago?
So 12 months ago, it was about the time we started to make that pivot, and everything was a bit up in the air. I was a bit nervous. I was a bit, is this going right? We were facing 12 months ago. We were facing a tough time. Is this company viable? And are we selling enough? We're lucky that we were selling enough to keep ourselves bootstrapped. Right. What's exciting is these projects are now, and it's taken a time to get there, but we've got some really exciting projects that are very, very close to financial investment decision. We've got the right area, the right cost structure. We've got something that looks really exciting in terms of making a profit for an investor that invests in these projects. So, and we've got investors that are really excited by that in the future. So for me, I'm really excited about taking that next step. I mean, it's a big learning curve for me. I'm a product person. I've spent my whole life making products or developing products. But so this is a new chapter for me too. So it really excites me because I can see a really important future in green chemicals. I mean, I knew we were going to do it. We have to do it. There's no way we can't do it. But I see it now moving from something that needs to happen to something that is happening. And for me, that's what's really exciting.
Yeah.
Like I say, I said to you right at the start, I love seeing the technology on the ground. I love delivering it. I love when it's working. I love that. I get a real kind of high from doing that.
That's great.
So
that's great. You can tell your energy completely changes when you talk about it. It's great to see. And wish you all the luck for it. All the best of luck.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to telling you how successful it's all going.
Good to hear it. Thanks for your time, Nick.
Excellent.
Okay, cheers, guys. Really nice talking to you, and good luck for the future.